Welcome back to yet another podcast here with Small Jobs Electric. I'm joined with Lewis and Carla over here. And today we're going to be talking about code changes and why the costs of electrical work is going up. So, Carla is going to be our host once again today. And so she's going to be firing away at the questions and hopefully we'll get some answers for you.
All right, welcome back. Have you ever gotten a quote for electrical work and thought, man, why is this so expensive? You're not alone. But what most people don't realize is that it has nothing to do with the electrician sometimes and everything to do with what's required by code. So a lot of times people hear that required by code. What code is that? Well, today we're going to break down what's changed, what is the National Electric Code, and why does it matter for your wallet. So let's get started.
All right.
What is a lot of times we'll hear it referred to as the NEC. What's that? Why is it important? Break it down.
Yeah, so it stands for the National Electrical Code. And basically it's like a Bible, right? For electricians. And it provides guidelines on proper installation. And so we have to interpret these guidelines and utilize them in the field and install them, to code standards. So it's basically for safety.
Awesome. So the NEC stands for the National Electric Code. And it's updated how often?
3 years.
Yep.
Every 3 years. And these are the laws, right? It's the
Mhm.
law. So it's not just something that any one person comes up with. It's a whole organization of professional electricians, and they set the standard for what's safe and what's required. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Right.
That's right. Yep.
Absolutely.
All right. So it's kind of like the building code for electricity, essentially, right? So we don't get to make the rules, but we do get to follow them to help keep people safe. So let's get into it because there's been a lot of changes in the last code cycle update that because of these code changes, which are very important, but it also leads to sometimes more costs for work and for homeowners where work is needed. So let's go over what some of these big changes were and how it's a protection for every homeowner out there. So the first one that was a major change was the AFCI/GFCI protection. What's changed with that code?
Well, that's been around for a little while now, but they keep extending like the areas in the home that are required to have AFCI protection. Um,
What is that? What is AFCI for us lay people out there?
yeah, so it stands for arc fault circuit interrupter, and basically it's designed to detect if there's an arc occurring, basically a loose connection where you have arcs that are happening between the connections, and that's what can lead to fires. So that's basically what our arc fault breaker is designed for. Prevent
Gotcha.
fires.
Okay, so it's a safety thing. So super important. Did anything change with the GFCI protection that's required?
Well, and almost every single location that's livable in the house is going to have to be GFI protected with the AFCI, GFCIs, as far as I'm understanding it as well.
Yeah, for the wet locations.
Rent
Yeah.
locations, anywhere in the garage, the kitchens, and that's been required for a very long time, but now they're hammering down a lot more on it.
Yeah, they've extended it out. So we're going to be seeing more and more of those requirements as far as like EV chargers. Like the last couple code cycles now, EV chargers that are cord and plug connected, GFI protection is needed. If you have your dryer, for example, if you have your
Really?
dryer, yeah, if your dryer's in your garage, that's an outlet. So now, we do like an upgrade coming in the next code cycle on 2023, we're going to need to be, putting that outlet on a GFI, which is going to add additional cost. The range inside your house.
Really?
Yeah, that's a big one. So again, GFI protection for your range in your kitchen. So these are some of the code changes that have happened. But over the years, it makes me think about the car, electric car. I'm sorry, not the electric car, the gas car. In the '70s, we didn't have seatbelts. So, at that time, it wasn't required to have seatbelts, but they found that it was a safety thing. So they've implemented, now every car has seatbelts. Nobody would think
School
not to have.
buses. School
Yeah.
buses have seat. Well, I didn't have seatbelts in my school bus.
Yeah,
I don't know
I
about
didn't. I
you.
didn't either.
We didn't even have
Airbags
seatbelts.
now.
Yeah,
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 and we didn't have them in the back seat either in the 80s.
Yeah. Yeah, or smoke detectors, you know? It used to be like, smoke detectors, um, late 70s, it was like, one smoke detector required in a house or just outside of a bedroom, you'd have a smoke detector. But now, they've figured out that we need to have smoke detectors on every floor and in every bedroom and, carbon monoxide detectors. So there's always code changes. There's more code changes and sometimes just a little bit of wording changes between one code cycle and another.
So, how does this requirement of AFCI protection and more GFCI protection, how does that raise the cost of the electrical work that we do in people's homes?
Well, I mean, yeah, it adds a lot of cost.
Yeah, it's not your typical breaker. I mean, typical standard breakers were pretty cheap back in the day. Now these AFCI breakers have built-in technology into them that are going to watch for loose connections and detect these arcs and sine waves inside of them. So they're becoming a lot more technologically advanced, and that costs more money,
Yeah.
a lot more money.
And because they have electronics in them too, they do fail. And we regularly go out and replace, they got like a maybe 10-year shelf life. So like homes that were built in like 2002, we're having to go back to a lot of these homes and replace them too.
Very interesting. So, there's sometimes the cost of the material itself is more expensive. And it seems like other times it's more expensive because it's not just the cost of the material, but there's more labor involved in meeting the code requirement for that now as well. So it's kind of a dual edged sword, but for our protection.
Yeah. And the cost of, warranting the products and everything, like, every company is going to have different warranties, but these breakers, they do have a higher fail point as well. So there's a cost associated with that.
Yeah, we go out a lot to AFCI breakers that are tripping, that are failing, and it's because they're very sensitive, which is what you want, right? That's the whole idea. But sometimes they're so sensitive that it's tripping
Mm.
for something it shouldn't be.
Yeah. I think one of the most recent code changes this year, on the 2020 code, is the need for um, disconnecting means outside. That's really for the firefighters. So they can shut the power off to the house without having to go into the home or have to wait for the utility company to pull the meter because that was what was happening before. So some of the municipalities still allow you to do a one for one replacement for existing homes. So there's a lot of like little nuances for existing versus new, but most of the counties now require that a disconnecting means put on outside, and
So
I
what
think that's
is
a big one.
what exactly does that look like? So you're saying disconnecting means, but for our homeowners out there who, don't understand what that is, what does that mean that we have to do now to fulfill that code requirement?
So it's a panel. It's a panel that goes outside of your home with just one big breaker on it, on and off switch. And if anybody ever has to come to the house under an emergency, they just flip it down and your whole house gets killed, pretty much.
All right. So we can see the benefit for, firefighters and things like that, being able to access that out because before they would have to wait to access the main breaker wherever the electrical panel was located. Is that right?
That's right.
Even for homeowners, it might be easier. Some people keep a lot of things in front of their electrical panel a lot of the time. So if you have
Which
to
is
get
not
to
up to
something,
code.
yeah, it's not up to
Yeah,
code.
not
It's
supposed to.
definitely not a good idea.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, sometimes we run out of space in our garages and we fill them up with stuff. And the easiest place to get to something like that would be outside.
Yeah, but you're not doing that, right, Lewis?
No.
So what kind of added cost does this add? So before you could, if someone needed a panel replacement or a service upgrade in their home, or they were upgrading the amount of power that they had to them from the power company into their home, they could just take out what they had and replace in that exact location. Now you have to add something
hmm
that's accessible outside. What kind of cost does that add to the job now?
It depends. It depends really on the setup, but typically you're normally adding around $2,000 to a job,
Wow, that's
so it's a
significant.
significant cost. But again, like the seatbelt thing, there are benefits to doing it. Just like with other things in the home. If you don't, sometimes not everything is required to be upgraded, but sometimes just because it's not required is like still a good idea. Like smoke detectors. Like why do people not have smoke detectors? throughout their house. I just don't get it.
Why would you want the bare minimum when you can, upgrade, get the safest thing possible? At the end of the day, sometimes codes are the bare minimum and the city allows you to stay that way, but why stay that way when there's something safer that we already know about that's out there?
Yeah. And
Good
and
point.
and the surge protectors now, those are required to
Yeah.
be installed. We go out to homeowners all the time and we let them know, hey, this is something that's required now. It wasn't something that was required at the time your house was put in.
Surge protection wasn't even a thing years ago. What
Yeah.
was that? But now it's something that's required by the code, right?
Yeah, that's right. So
And
we recommend it.
what does surge protection do?
To me, the easiest way to put it is it's a device that watches the voltage of your house. Any over voltage, over current that comes into your house, this device will detect it and redirect it to the grounding system rather than affecting, appliances in your home. These special expensive breakers that we have to buy now, they're like we said, they're full of little components inside that are like miniature computers. So you definitely want to keep those working for as long as possible and extend their life expectancy.
And how does having us because it's these are really for safety issues and for people's benefit, what's required by the code. It's not always convenient because it adds a lot of cost sometimes, but it's for our protection. So, how does having a surge protector, how does that benefit a homeowner with their electronics and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, with a good quality surge protector, you're gonna help to extend the life of your equipment. Like no surge protector out there is gonna be bulletproof and you're never gonna have problems. I mean, equipment has an expiration date, you might say. The manufacturer makes their products to fail because they want you to buy a new product. But the surge protector does is help your equipment to not fail sooner than what it's expected to. So you bought a piece of equipment, it's supposed to last 10 years, let's say, but it only lasted 3 years, and then you find out, well, the circuit board inside that equipment went bad. Well, by putting in a surge protector, you could have gotten that 10 years, or let's try to get it closer to that. So ultimately, the surge protector does is it saves you money. There is an upfront cost to it, but in the long run, it's designed to save your money, not just for one piece of equipment in your house, but virtually for everything in your home.
I think there's a common misconception with homeowners who have surge protection installed that if their surge protector fails or the light's blinking, like the red light, because normally there's a green light that stays on with it, right? So everything's. When the red light comes on, I think there's a common misconception that the surge protectors failed, when in reality, that's not true. Is that correct?
Depends on the manufacturer. Depends on the way that they set it up. That red light might mean that it has to get replaced. So I mean, depending on the manufacturer that made that surge protector, it just depends on them. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Some of the products that like we install actually has a buzzer on it. So, because most people aren't going to go and look at their surge protector. They kind of install it and forget it, right? But with the units we install, it notifies them that there's an issue and it needs to be replaced. So it alerts them with the noise, and besides having the actual light as well.
And I think sometimes it's going off because it did what it's designed to do. It's like a bodyguard, right? The bodyguard takes the hit so the person they're protecting doesn't have to. So a lot of times, it goes on its little kamikaze mission and it takes the hit for the electronics, so that the rest of the things don't have to take the hit. So it sacrifices itself. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and these devices are like they're designed to take multiple surges, and
Mhm.
we every home gets surges every day. Some are bigger, some are smaller. Every time the AC unit comes on, those lights in your house like dim for a second. That's creating a surge. Those are like surges throughout the home. If you have a pool, the motor when that kicks on, that creates a surge. If you've got a instant hot water heater in your home that's electric, or a car charger, any big load that comes on in your home that's going to constantly be creating surges. Even your neighbors, what they're doing in their home because you're tied to the same transformer they are, and what they're doing in their home can actually cause your lights to dim too because they're putting extra strain, especially if the transformer is already loaded down.
If it's maxed out. We've
Yeah.
we've gone to some homeowners' homes where their lights are dimming, and it's because a neighbor 5 doors down put in an electric tankless hot water heater, and then they had to call Tico out to the street to get that transformer upgraded, And that homeowner who installed that electric tankless water heater had to pay the price for that.
Yeah.
And that was like 20 grand. So think twice before you install one of those electric ones. But yeah, the
Or
surge protector.
at least get a
And get a surge
engineer.
protector.
Somebody that's
Yeah.
gonna come out and do some load calculations.
Yeah, at least get an
Mhm.
engineer to come out there if you're going to be putting anything sizable in.
Yeah, like that. So something else that's changed. What changed in the code with the dedicated circuits?
Car chargers. I mean, every car charger should have its own dedicated circuit. It shouldn't be getting pulled from the dryer or anything like that. And then the right load calculation should be done for that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. In new homes, you got to have a dedicated circuit for the car charger.
Mhm.
That's probably the biggest thing, when it comes to, dedicated circuits that I can think of at this particular moment. Yeah.
So most code changes are written because something went wrong somewhere for someone, unfortunately. So that we have to pivot in our trade. We have to roll along with these changes, but sometimes that unfortunately means extra cost for homeowners. But it's important to look at it the correct way, right? It's for their protection and for their safety. So that is something to keep in mind. So electricians aren't just charging more because they feel like it. They have to meet these standards and if you're not, meeting these requirements and your job is being inspected, it's not going to pass inspection. So this is the law. And even if your job, is something smaller like a repair or whatnot that doesn't require a permit, you still want to make sure that the technician you're hiring is doing everything according to the code because that's what's safe. So it's not just run a wire and you're done anymore. There's a lot more to it.
Yeah.
And the
And,
code
and,
is
and
changing.
yeah. And to be fair, like no electrician out there knows everything, you know, even the best electricians can miss things or, not realize something. So like, it's always something to keep in mind. You always know a good company from a bad one is if, like they take care of their customers. If there's an issue, they didn't pass inspection with something, they come out, they take care of it. Even with these code changes, because code changes can sneak up even on the best companies out there.
There's a lot. How thick is the code book?
It's like that.
There's a
And there's a
lot.
lot of it's a lot of fine small print.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot to keep up with. There's a lot to keep in mind. Every 3 years, you have to go. No, every 2 years. I'm sorry. Every 3 years, the code changes. Every 2 years, you have to go for continuing education.
Yeah.
So that's a lot to keep up with.
Yeah, and the code book's it's not an instruction manual. It doesn't say, if you're installing this is how you do it. You have to interpret the codes. And sometimes you can even get opinions. I had that situation this morning. When one contractor's opinion is different than my opinion about the interpretation of the code. It's kind of like the Bible. Like some people interpret it different ways. And you can get inspectors and they can sit there and argue with each other
Yeah.
about the interpretation of a code.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause it says one thing on one side and then a revision on the other side about the same thing. Right?
Yeah,
So-
exactly. I mean, people that are watching this podcast, they might, interpret something different than what we're interpreting. So, there is a fine line in there, though. But at the same time, I think it's when it comes to NEC code changes, there's like those big code changes that are important, like disconnecting means outside, um, having smoke detectors in your home. Oftentimes, those aren't like forced onto anybody to do. When you're like if you're remodeling your home, you're supposed to do it. But a lot of times we don't find anybody's actually having that done. But those are some basic things that I think that are really important, that I'm happy to see that are in the NEC code.
So sometimes we'll go out to a house and, they'll want a job done and, we'll get a permit. But that also can require, because of what's required by the code, even if, it has nothing to do with something else in the home, the inspector is going to go through and look at stuff, even if it has nothing related to what we did, just that one job. So sometimes it requires us to bring the home up to code, even if it's, for something small, like adding, a dedicated circuit somewhere for something. That means everything else in the area has to be brought up to code. And that can add additional costs sometimes.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, and it can be frustrating for homeowners. However, it's for their safety.
Yeah.
At the
Mhm.
end of the day, it's about safety, and protecting people and their property.
So I don't think we ever answered the question about, I didn't ask it, but for surge protection, how much extra cost does that typically add for a job now that it's required to have for some work?
Well, I think it depends on the product that company's installing. I mean, it can range anywhere from several $100s to a couple $1,000. And there's like different layers of surge protection too. Like you can add surge protection to your AC unit as well, maybe your pool equipment, other entry points to your home. And so there's not like a one size fits all approach. But I think like it's important, like whoever's buying surge protection, like what is the warranties associated with the product that's being installed?
What's a good warranty for surge protection look like or sound like?
Yeah, I mean, for us, like at Small Jobs Electric, we offer a lifetime warranty. So we believe in the product that we install. We'll come out and replace it at no charge, parts and labor for our homeowners, our customers. A lot of companies, they give you a 1 year warranty on surge protection, and they're gone. Do you really believe in your product? If
Yeah.
all you can do is provide a 1 year warranty for something like that, and many companies charge quite a bit of money here in the Tampa Bay area, upwards of $1,200 to $1,500, and our price is well below that. So we feel like we're very well priced in the market, and especially for the service that we provide and the warranty what we provide with it.
Also comes down to the installer, making sure that you have a good grounding system. It does you no good if you're getting a surge protector installed and then you come to find out there's no grounding system to the house because it's so old. So it also comes down to the installer, making sure that you have the correct equipment out there and that things are going to work properly after it's installed.
All right. So now we can understand what some of these important code changes are and how that affects the wallet and the cost of jobs when we go out to look at customers' homes and why these costs are increasing.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you so much for watching our podcast here on NEC code changes and why it's costing more money to have an electrician come out to your home to do these upgrades. So we'll see you on our next podcast.